Okay, hi guys. So I'm about to share my screen while I'm pulling it up. Um, share. No, wait, I want to make it bigger. While I'm starting to share my screen, super sorry, my roommate is having a get together with friends and was not expecting it to go this late, but here we are. So I do have an AirPod in, so hopefully you guys don't have to hear all that. Instead of my computer picking up all the sound around, I'm hoping you guys just hear this. But if you aren't, I'm very sorry. Let's see, format, slide, format view. There we go. Slideshow. Okay, so let's get started. Okay. Hi guys, so I'm Catherine Pinchlow. I'm your all's presenter. I'm doing a social emotional lesson for high school seniors, and I titled it Mind Management, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. So our objectives today, we're going to identify the differences between and the importance of mind management and emotional regulation. We're going to know the importance of habits and proactive work, learn how an emotion works and how to fully feel it, and understand the effect of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then we're going to go over some mind management tools such as affirmations, meditation, ground, and memorization. All right, so pop quiz time. Everyone is going to take out a piece of paper and answer this two simple questions for me. So one, describe what an emotion is. You can decide whether your audience is a third grader or a scientist. How would you explain what an emotion is? So, fun fact, I am a substitute teacher. I don't know if any of you guys know that. So I had some of my students actually answer. So I do have high school responses. Let's see. An emotion, a feeling that can affect the way you're thinking and something you feel deep inside. A feeling of something that comes after something. All right. An emotion are feelings that vary on how you feel. And a feeling that you get when you're upset, mad, or stressed. So that's what some high schoolers kind of defined as an emotion. Then I asked the students about thoughts. Try to explain a thought. The answers I got were a thought is an image in your head of some sort that can include an action as well. Okay. A thought is an idea that you yourself come up with. A thought is an idea popping up in your head or a little voice that helps you through life. Oh, that's fun. I like that one. A little voice that helps you through life. And then a thought would be you thinking of something. Okay, cool. So I was kind of expecting the students to answer again in more kind of broad abstract ways. And then we're going to be going into a video. I'm going to take my AirPod out. Hopefully it doesn't affect the sound, but I'm nervous that I don't want it to play in just my ear and not actually record. So hopefully this records. Here we go. Let's watch the video. It just took me off of slideshow. Goodness, view slideshow. All righty. Nope, not what I wanted to do. Okay, there we go. So she goes in a little bit of less what exactly an emotion is, but kind of the physiology that comes after. So we have this emotion that comes up that's kind of derived from thoughts, and then different kind of hormones, depending on what emotion is kind of being flooded through your body, and it takes 90 seconds for your body to process that. A thought, she didn't go into it. So a thought is a synapse in your brain. Basically, a synapse is where two neurons connect and they kind of communicate and they have a synapse. Me personally, it's really hard to understand or like conceptualize, not understand, but conceptualize what that means on like a micro, teeny tiny scale. So the best way to kind of think of a thought is like a synapse firing. That's all a thought is. So many thoughts throughout the day. One thing that I learned through therapy and through my counseling courses is that you are not your thoughts. And when I heard this for the first time as a client, I was blown away because I thought my thoughts were what made me who I was. That's what made up my personality. I kind of identified a lot with my thoughts. So this concept really kind of rattled my world and my foundation almost of understanding kind of what makes me up. And same with feelings, like you're not your feelings. This was another thing I really associated like who I am with like what I feel. And to take this further, basically, feelings just happen. They it's hard to describe, but feelings are neutral and it doesn't really say anything about you. Everybody experiences the same feelings at different times and different scenarios, but that doesn't define you. And same with thoughts. A lot of people have thoughts that sometimes they don't actually agree with. And that can be confusing because it's your brain, right? But thinking the fact that some thoughts are not always originally yours. For example, it could be something that someone else said that your brain just kind of remembered. It can be something you've read or media input. Basically, anything you consume affects your thoughts or can kind of create thoughts. And so your thoughts aren't always originally yours. So, what's important with this is by meditating and through self assessment, you can better decide what your true opinions are when it comes to your thoughts. So, you are not subject to your thoughts. You don't have to, the first thing you think of doesn't mean you agree with it, but simply when you become an observer of your thoughts, you then kind of can decide what's important and what needs to be filtered out and is probably something you just consumed through media and you don't actually agree with. And emotions, kind of a different way to define emotions could be so we've got a physiological understanding of an emotion, but we can also define an emotion as just data or just like information. And so this information, um, to be honest, I'm texting my roommate to turn down the music because I just hope it's not disrupting my presentation. This is very unfortunate. Anyways, that got me a little distracted. So back to emotions. Emotions are just data and information. So that's another kind of way to define emotions. So meaning emotions aren't good or bad. They don't really say anything about you, but they are giving you information about what's going on or maybe some needs that you need to address. And then, like, lastly, kind of another concept we're going to bring all this together, or that's also coming together with this, is that you are training your brain. Whether you do it intentionally or unintentionally, you are always training your brain. It's like a muscle. So when you are constantly managing your emotions a certain way and building those habits, you're training your brain to just automatically reach for those habits. Whatever you're doing habitually, you are training your brain so that way it's easier to kind of access. Like that's what you get used to and that's what you do subconsciously kind of without thinking. So what is all of this and why are we learning this? So, mind management, this is a personal term I came up with, but there's a lot of information going out about emotional regulation, which is great. We're going to go over some stuff that is emotional regulation, and you might have heard some of it by now. You might implement some of these practices. But emotional regulation, let's define that really quickly. This is the ability to understand and manage your behavior and your reactions to feelings and things happening around you. So it's almost like a scale. Like everyone regulates themselves, whether it's in a healthy manner or an unhealthy manner. We all regulate our emotions. For example, if someone gets really mad and they just maybe don't have a lot of control, they might punch something or punch a wall or punch a pillow or like react rather than purposefully act. Now, that reaction was kind of their way to build up that emotion and do something with it. It wasn't a healthy way of coping. It wasn't a healthy way of regulating it, but it kind of regulated and maybe got it out of the system, or it might have perpetuated the feeling and might continue. So, on the opposite scale, maybe someone who's mad, if they take a couple breathing techniques to calm and ground themselves, then that is another side of the scale of emotional regulation where kind of managing it a lot better. So for me, mind management is when you are doing the work and practicing these exercises when you are regulated so that it is much more accessible to utilize and implement those practices during a crisis or when regulating heightened emotions. And so what I mean by, oops, sorry, that was an accident. um, so a lot of times when we talk about emotional regulation, we are in the moment, full with our emotions, trying to cope. And it's really hard to access all of these tools we talk about if we aren't implementing them sooner, if we aren't implementing them when we are regulated. And so that's what I'm calling mind management is we are always managing our mind. We aren't only managing our mind when our emotions are escalated because of a scenario. We're also managing our mind when we're relaxing and doing nothing, or when we're completely regulated. And it's important to implement emotional regulation strategies outside of a crisis. That way you can actually access them. We'll go into that a little bit more. And so I just kind of want to reiterate that emotions are neutral. It's not good or bad to be mad. You are allowed to be mad. It is a valid feeling. It does not make you a bad person, doesn't make you a good person. Having emotions, all emotions are neutral, but it's our reactions or our actions, if we're deciding to act purposefully, that we can determine as good or bad. So again, it's not a bad thing to be mad, but it's a bad thing to punch someone because you're mad or punch a wall because you're mad. And now you've got other consequences that you've got to clean up. Or a good reaction again would be those like breathing techniques. So emotions are neutral, but we need to find a way how to manage our emotions because that's what can kind of get us in trouble or not. So again, it all comes down to habits. So habits, when you are doing habits routinely throughout your day, that's all well. But when you hit a crisis, you resort to your habits. So that's why habits are so important. If your habits when you're regulated are to just eat junk food and um, kind of scroll on your phone, when your emotions are heightened, when you're dealing with an emotional crisis, you're not all of a sudden going to be like, oh, hey, I should journal right now. Or what was that one breathing technique we learned once when the counselor was presenting to us? Yes, I'm addressing myself. Um, no, you're not going to resort to that in a crisis. You're going to resort to scrolling or just kind of reacting versus implementing those techniques because you will always revert to your habits in a crisis. So that's why it helps to be proactive. It is really important to practice these emotional regulation strategies before the crisis, before your emotions get dysregulated, if that makes sense. So mind management is just kind of my term for doing all these emotional regulation strategies before they are in dire need, before you are desperate for using them and implementing them. Because again, if you aren't practicing them, you are only going to revert to whatever your habits are. And so the goal when doing emotional regulation is to avoid immediate gratification or temporary solutions and rather address the root of the problem or provide yourself with longer term solutions as well as one solutions that don't have negative consequences. I always go back to the mad example because it's just consistent. I just don't want to get you guys lost in examples. So again, your immediate gratification when you're mad is punching that wall. But now that was a temporary solution because you're probably still mad. It probably felt good for a second, but now you're still mad and you got a hole in your wall. So now you got to solve that problem. And then when you get mad again, you've just almost kind of delayed the problem or extended it because you've kind of had this built up of feelings rather than actually addressing the problem. So that's why emotional regulation is really important because it helps you have long-term gratification, long-term solutions to your emotions rather than acting impulsively, getting immediate gratification, and then probably having to deal with some negative consequences or just delaying the problem. All right. So tools in your toolbox. I absolutely love this. This example or metaphor used to drive me insane when I was working on my teaching degree because I'm a very logical thinker at times, and I'm like, what is this tool belt? Like, I just really struggled. What I'm recognizing is it as a metaphor. I wasn't a student, but still, sometimes metaphors. I was a logical thinker, or a literal, not logical, very literal. So the tool belt messed with me. But if we think about having a metaphor tool belt, you want to know what you have immediate access to. Kind of how I was saying, if you've never practiced journaling, when you're pissed off, you're not gonna be like, oh, this is the time to journal. You don't really have access to that tool. So emotional regulation and kind of practicing these different tools is so that way you have immediate access to grab out of your pocket when you don't have other resources around, or when you're in a crisis and you need to problem solve and get a resource. That's kind of what it means by your tool belt. So, what are some tools that you guys have? I also had students answer this, and I told them you can tell me if your tool belt is filled with positive tools or maybe some unhealthy coping mechanisms. I just wanted them to tell me not just what they heard maybe in a not just what they heard in a okay, in like a presentation and they don't actually implement. What do they actually implement? One girl said, I like being left alone. I cry about it or listen to music. I learned to read to be in a different reality, or I color, or I just sleep. I listen to music, I color, eat lots of food, draw, so we're more bullet points. And personally, I tend to keep it to myself and cancel everyone out since talking about it makes me feel sadder. Okay, so very honest, real reactions of what students do and what they access. So let's go into some tools. So one is the 90-second. In our YouTube video, we got a little bit of an introduction with this, but this is going into the science and physiology of emotions. One thing for me personally, I like understanding why things are happening and why I'm doing it because then it gives me more of a purpose to actually implement the change. So now that we know that emotions are, once they're triggered, then we've got hormones flowing through our body, and it takes about 90 seconds for our body to process and get that out. But if we start the cycle over and over and over again, it feels like that emotion is being prolonged because we're actually kind of prolonging it. So I'm going to move my little screen down to the bottom. I might do this a couple times. But anyways, so the important thing with this 90-second rule is you have to identify your feelings. So sometimes that's hard if maybe you haven't done a lot of work about feelings. Maybe you don't have a lot of conceptual understanding of feelings because maybe you don't talk about it a lot or you weren't raised speaking about it. So one thing you do is access the feelings wheel. I know sometimes we get a little sick of this, but the important part of this 90-second practice is first you have to address the feeling. So you can go through the feelings wheel. This one time I did it. I just read through the feelings until one kind of made me cry. That's how I know which one I identify with the most. We all might identify with it differently. So let's say I came up with lonely. I actually do remember there was a scenario where I came up with lonely. And so then what you do is you don't think about being lonely. You've identified lonely. And then for 90 seconds, I like setting an alarm on my watch for 90 seconds. So again, that's kind of using your tools, your resources. You've got actual resources that can help you implement these strategies, and this strategy is a resource, okay? So what you do is you don't think about being lonely or what's causing lonely or the thoughts and feeling or the thoughts and emotions. What you think about for those 90 seconds is the actual sensations in your body. Like, what are you physically feeling? And try to describe it and explain it. So you go, okay, I'm lonely. Starting my 90-second timer. How does that feel? I've got a pit in my stomach. It kind of feels like my heart dropped into my stomach and it feels heavy and almost like I want to crunch up in a ball because it feels like it's pulling me in. And then my heart is slow, but it just feels hot and warm. And that warm is also in my face and it makes my eyes like water. So that's what you're basically observing yourself. You're observing when I'm feeling lonely, when I'm having the emotion of loneliness, what am I physically feeling in my body? We're kind of taking it back to the physiology, like what's going on. And then 90 seconds, and sometimes like breathing through it might help. Sometimes when you do this, you might cry. Like those feelings might come out. That's okay. This is kind of actually a really intense process. That's why I wanted to go over it first. It's really hard to access just because it takes a lot of background knowledge. But if you're like in a safe place where you feel comfortable just like feeling and sitting with that emotion. The whole point is to sit with it. A lot of times, our instant gratification wants to cover it up. When I'm lonely, sometimes I just eat all of these sweets to fix that pit in my stomach. And then now I've got a tummy ache and I still have that pit in my stomach because I still feel lonely. But this helps you, again, just kind of flush out that feeling and just identify it. So later down the road, you can maybe identify it sooner. And so hopefully by those 90 seconds, all of that hotness in the face that like I was describing, again, this was my own personal experience, has passed through my body and like my body has processed those hormones and now I'm no longer feeling those sensations in my body. Now, sometimes this is really helpful. It can be a one and done. There's been times where I've been really upset and I've sat in my car and I've done this 2 or 3 times and it has not helped. Maybe it's calmed me down a little bit. I also think that sometimes when we're really overwhelmed and dealing with heightened emotions or crises, we're going to have to use multiple tools. So just keep that in mind. But sometimes it might not work because maybe that specific feeling you have to address in different ways, and we're going to go into different ways. Sometimes it might work right away and it might kind of give you clarity and help you move on from the scenario. Or again, you might need to add it with another technique. Or it also might depend on the day. Sometimes I've used this technique and I just don't think it's the day for it. So then that's when you go into your tool belt and grab another tool. That's why it's important to have so many different kind of resources or mind management tools to access. So that way, when one's not working, you can go into another one. So the next one, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if people consider this a tool, but wait till I explain because it makes sense. So if you don't know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this little pyramid example. I don't know why I made it there. But basically it talks about how, you have to have the base of the pyramid before you have the top of the pyramid. So the top of the pyramid is self-fulfillment needs, or also just like a higher level of thinking, if you want to kind of break it down that way. So the top of the pyramid is your higher level of thinking, and the bottom of your pyramid is just kind of addressing really basic things. Well, think about it. How many of you guys have really paid attention to a lecture when you only had 2 hours of sleep? No, you can't really function and think that cognitively. I don't know if that's the word I wanted. But you can't really think that intensely and focus and process what the professor is saying or the teacher is saying when you've had 2 hours of sleep. So that's why sleep is at the bottom. Like you have to have sleep before you can reach higher levels of thinking. Same with like food, warmth, and water. So how does this concept, theory, idea pull into a tool that we can use for emotional regulation? Well, let me explain. A lot of times your anxiety might be heightened because you're hungry. Anyone ever been hangry? I know we all love that new term. Um, but yeah, when you're sometimes you are just angry and you just need to eat, and that was it. Your body just literally needed fuel, and without having that basic need met, you weren't really able to manage your emotions. Or the only way to really manage this emotion is just to eat. Or sometimes you'll ever be like, do you just need a nap? And then you actually really do need a nap. Or you need more sleep because I don't know, sometimes as high schoolers, you don't get a lot of sleep because you're scrolling on your phone. I myself, working on my master's degree, sometimes I'm not getting a lot of sleep with all the schoolwork and actual work I'm doing. So sometimes one of your tool belts, if you are overwhelmed with feelings, overwhelmed and stressed, maybe you're dealing with a crisis, maybe an anxiety attack, there's so many things we could be addressing with all of these emotional regulation strategies. But sometimes the way to one of the tools in your tool belt might just be self-assessing and recognizing you need to drink some water, or you need to get some food in you, or you need to take a nap. So that's actually one of your very basic compared to the last one, which was a little complex. All right. I love this meme. If you guys like Grey's Anatomy, you're my favorites. So Christina here, she says, should I sleep or should I shower? I could sleep in the shower, but I'm also starving. Like, who else has ever felt this? You feel this dilemma, you've just got so much going on, and then now it's like, which need am I going to meet first? This just kind of shows like the importance of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. She can't think about anything else because she's got all these other basic needs she really needs to address. All right, moving on. Um, sorry, I might be re-recording this tomorrow. I was not anticipating this tonight. I don't know if you guys heard anything. Okay, so the next tool, affirmations. Affirmations can help you during a mental health crisis or just heightened emotions because it can help you just kind of remember where you're at. It can help you not overthink. This might be, affirmations can be really good for like anxiety attacks or again, just like overthinking. So, how can we access these? Sometimes you can write them down. You can write them down and put them on your mirror to make them habitual, or when you're upset, you can just go and read them. You can research them. Literally look them up on your phone. Like our phone is a great tool. We can literally look up so many things. If you're being like, I really don't know an affirmation, because they really do take practice, then just research some on your phone and then just read them over yourself. I have actually made some bracelets of some affirmations. Quite literally, this one, I don't know if you guys can see. Anyways, it says breathe 3x, so breathe 3 times. So this one helps me to remember, oh, maybe I should breathe. I've got another affirmation that says, so I guess that's not really an affirmation. Sorry. I was just excited about it. This one says trust, and another one says my heart is open. So those are some affirmations that like I just have reminded every day when I work them. So that's kind of a fun way to implement affirmations. So tools that we give you, you can make them fun. You can make them your own. If you hate the bracelet idea, that's totally fine. If you love it, awesome. Okay, so journaling. One thing I want to get to is journaling. It does not matter what you journal. It matters that you journal. And again, you're not really going to journal when you're pissed off if you've never done it when you're chilling. So again, the really important thing the really important thing is to be doing this when you're regulated. So that way, when you're dysregulated, you can actually access the tool. You can actually have just even having the idea of like, oh, maybe I should journal right now in this moment. That's pretty tough. So that's why we're doing it habitually. So it becomes easier to access. If you don't know what to journal, you don't know where to start, literally Google it. Like we have so much access to with our phones or with the internet. So just Google it, guys. You can summarize your day every day, or you can do daily gratitude. Gratitude, I kind of wanted to lump in with journaling, but it can also be an individual tool itself. Gratitude and anxiety, fun fact, can literally not coexist. They happen in the same exact area of the brain, and you cannot do both at the same time. So if you are feeling super anxious, if you start practicing gratitude, that could be some of the affirmations we talked about. It could be some journaling prompts. You could write down gratitude, or you can just speak them out. Your brain will shift and only think about gratitude because it can't do both gratitude and anxiety at the same time. That's super cool. Again, kind of like the bracelets idea for affirmations, a modification for journaling. If you're not about journaling, you can vlog it. I've actually done this for like a couple months. I did a gratitude vlog, and every night I would just say 3 things I was grateful for and did a vlog of it. It's perfect. Okay, next I've got meditation. So, meditation really helps you become the observer of your thoughts. That's the whole goal. I was really bad at meditation because I was thought because I didn't really understand meditation. I would just put myself in a silent room and try not to think. I would try not to scratch my face. And as you guys have noticed, I've been pretty fidgety during this presentation. That's just kind of how I am. So I thought I was bad at meditating because I couldn't go like 10 seconds without thinking about something, without scratching my face, without getting distracted. So I'm like, okay, meditate, not for me. False. I learned meditating is literally observing your thoughts. Kind of think of yourself as like a scientist looking inward and trying to understand what's going on. That's what basically meditation is. That's how I interpret it to be. Also, you can do guided meditations. This is less of a scientific approach like my previous one, and more so a approach to just kind of help you guide your mind to feeling maybe a bit more calm. Sometimes when I would get overly whelmed, overthinking, or overly anxious, if I listened to a guided meditation, it would kind of help me. It would tell me to breathe in, breathe out, and I would listen. It would kind of speak affirmations over me, and I would be thinking about them because that's what I'm listening to. So it kind of brings in some techniques we discussed before. And when you practice meditation and you kind of start observing your thoughts, it helps you to self assess better, which means when you are dysregulated and you're like, I need to use an emotional regulation strategy, because you've practiced meditating, you're going to be a lot better. You're going to be improving your skill of assessing yourself and your needs and your thoughts and your feelings. Moving on to grounding. So, grounding techniques kind of bring you back to reality. Again, this is more for overthinking and maybe if you're thinking about the future too much. But grounding, think about it as one, I like square breathing. That's you breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, square breathing. And then you can also do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule, which is 5 things that you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And that can just kind of help you bring yourself back to the present. Memorization. Okay, remember. So memorization can help you, like one with affirmations. If you're not good at affirmations right off the bat, if you have some memorized, that can help. Or again, if you're really upset, if you just have a mantra that helps, that you can say that kind of gets you through the moment, that's awesome. People also use Bible verses. One that I used, so I wrote a poem for a competition and I had it memorized. I still have it memorized. And this one day I was having a bad anxiety attack and I was very dysregulated. And because I had this thing memorized, I was like, I'm just going to say it. It's just a random poem that I wrote. I mean, it's like a mental health poem. But I was like, I'll say it. I don't know if it's helpful. So I sat there. I'm going to say it for you guys now. Anxiety, depression, objectification, sexism is the system we live in, and we can let it break us down, or we can stand despite. You see, despite my performance anxiety, I still stand to perform for society as a direct indication of my determination to share this message of inspiration with you. Now, don't get me wrong, no. When you stand, you may not be able to disband from the hand that you were dealt or the feelings that you have felt. It is when you face those challenges head on that you stop being a pawn. When you stand despite the entirety of your anxiety, you can create a dynasty. When you stand despite the suppression of your depression, you can begin to question what that tension is really for. Instead of it holding you back, you can use it to project yourself forward. When you stand despite the exemplification of objectification, you can begin the calculation and curation of who you really are. And when you stand despite the sexism in the system, you realize your purpose is not to impress him, but that you were created for so much more. And when the weights of the world are on your shoulders, that is the moment you stand. And when you stand in the face of those challenges, when you stand despite it all, you learn your true strength. So, like, I said this poem when I was literally in tears. I had this thing memorized. Like right now, I just kind of rattled it off, but I haven't rattled it off because I have it so well memorized. But when I was in a very dysregulated, I said this poem and it kind of helped me process emotions, but it also helped me remember, okay, I'm standing despite my anxiety. I'm dealing with anxiety, but I'm getting through it anyways. I am strong. And I was kind of, it really helped me reframe my mind and kind of pull myself out of that anxious overthinking. Next, our cell phone. I like this icon because we literally all have this resource, right? A lot of us do. So use your physical resources. As I said, there's so many things that you can access. And so with your phone, you can call 988 if you're having a serious crisis. You can call a family member or a friend. You can listen to a song or you can listen to a guided meditation. So even if you might not have some of these things memorized, you can't remember them, you can really utilize your resources, your physical resource, right? Okay, let me move. Okay, so look at our beautiful belt. Look at all the different tools we have. We've got grounding techniques, meditation, our 90-second practice, memorization, affirmations, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, journaling, blogging, 988, call a friend, listen to a song or meditation, and Google things if you just need help with ideas. Now, one thing, those are all the things, but poco y poco, like little by little. If you have never implemented any of these, you don't really want to try implementing all of them because you're going to get overwhelmed and you probably won't keep up that habit. Maybe just focus on one. Think about one area in your life right now. What is something you could be working on? Like maybe Maslow's. Do you guys need to prioritize sleep? And if you prioritize sleep, could that help you be more proactive so that when you emotionally regulate, it might be easier because you're more rested? Again, most of my presentation, again, we've gone over emotional regulation, but the importance is the prep work, the proactiveness, so that way when you are desperately needing your emotional regulation tools, you can actually use them because you aren't just thinking about your emotions. You can pause, self-assess, and try to remember which of these you want to do in that moment. But also keep in mind, it's okay if your belt looks like this. This is awesome. If your belt has absolutely no tools on it and you're adding one by prioritizing sleep, if that's the one thing you walk away with today, awesome. Maybe it's prioritizing nutrition or prioritizing drinking water. Maybe the one thing, maybe you've got that under control. Maybe the one thing you want to do is start journaling. Just focus on one for a little while and try to not master it. You don't have to like master the skill before you can add another tool to your tool belt, but try to get it again as a habit so that way you can actually access it when you are struggling. And it's not going. There we go. Resources. Oh, conclusion. Okay, so conclusion. Ultimately, why do we need to manage our mind? Because it helps you actually access your tools. It helps you access your emotional regulation strategies that we teach you about all the time. But instead of you not using those tools, we can access them. And it helps you develop new tools. It can help you assess and understand your needs. And it can help you prepare for when you actually encounter a crisis. So thank you guys so much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll take them now. But since this isn't a real presentation, I'm going to end it. So thank you guys for listening and dealing with all the background noise. I hope when I listen back to this, it'll be okay and publishable. If not, I'll just re-record. Okay, bye guys.